Francisco Balbi, The Great Siege of Malta, Chapter 1. The Sultan Suleiman prepares his expedition against the island of Malta. After the death of Claude de la Senglet, Jean de la Valette was chosen as Grand Master of the Order of St. John, and it is he who still holds the position. He is a French knight of the Long of Provence, a very good Christian, and a soldier who is not only brave, but wise, as well as being a great leader. Before he reached the highest rank of the order, he held a number of varying positions, from being captain of a galley to being in charge of all the fleet. He had been bailiff of Lango, governor of Tripoli, and had also been present at the siege of Rhodes. Jean de la Valette was elected as Grand Master in August 1557. So that his qualities can be appreciated, I shall briefly describe his nature and his appearance for the benefit of those who have never seen or known him. In the year 1565, he was 67 years old, tall and very well built. His appearance is extremely dignified, and he has the manner of authority befitting a Grand Master. In temperament, he is rather melancholy, but for his age he is very robust, as has been demonstrated in the siege. A very devout man, he has a good memory, wisdom and intelligence, and, from his experience of warfare, both on land and sea, has acquired an excellent judgment. Moderate in his actions, patient in difficulty, he is an accomplished linguist, but above all, he is a lover of justice, and enjoys the good opinion of all Christian princes. Certainly there can be no doubt that it took a man of his wisdom and courage to be able to resist the onslaught of Suleiman, which took place, as I shall now tell, in this year 1565. It pleased God that this year, when the Order of St. John was under the good governance of the brave and devout Grand Master Jean de la Valette, the Sultan Suleiman saw fit to attack the order. Angered by the great harm inflicted on him by land and sea by the galleys and knights of the order, the Sultan brought up an immense army against them. He was incensed by the fact that in all the attacks made upon his possessions in Africa, whether successful or not, by the great King of Spain, Don Philip, as well as by his father, the mighty Emperor Charles V, the galleys of the order had invariably been present. They had taken part in the campaigns against Tunis, Algiers, Galvez, and at Peñón de la Gomera. Not content with this, they had even attempted to capture various Turkish ports in the archipelago, such as Modon and the island of Malvasia. All this would seem enough reason for the Sultan to undertake his expedition, yet it was believed in Malta that the real cause of Suleiman's vast enterprise, commanded by his two ablest pashas, was something quite different. I should explain this by quoting the words of a Greek knight, who on the orders of the Grand Master was living in Constantinople at the time when the Armada was being prepared. This knight, through his ability and knowledge of the language, was able to penetrate into the chambers of the principal pashas themselves, though at great risk to his own life. Being at Constantinople on the orders of the Grand Master, he learned, so he said, of the Sultan's anger against the Order of St. John, and how it had increased since in the early days of Jean de Valette's Grand Mastership, a most determined attempt had been made by the knights to seize the island of Malvasia, an important strong point in the archipelago. The Grand Master, always determined to inflict the greatest possible damage on the enemy of the Christian faith and of his order, had hoped to capture the island with only a few men and at no great cost. Malvasia had only recently fallen within the power of the Turks, rather through the treacherous conduct of certain ministers of the Venetian Republic and others in whom the Republic trusted, than due to any great feat of arms on the part of the Turks. The Grand Master did not let the matter rest, but immediately sent off 2 galleys, a galliot, and 3 frigates. These, he had been assured, would be enough for the operation. When the Sultan learned of the expedition, he was as furious as if he had in fact lost the island. To add fuel to the flames, he then learned that Commander Romgar, captain of the 2 galleys, had seized a merchantman off the shores of Alexandria. This ship was on its way to Mecca, carrying a lady of high rank, who was taken prisoner along with the others. It is said that she was the aunt of Ali, the chief pasha, but others maintained that she was the nurse of the Sultan's favourite wife. Whatever may be the truth of it, Both these two influential figures in the Turkish court were continually urging the destruction of Malta upon the Sultan. Gainzeva was the name of this lady who was captured. She was over 100 years old at the time and was still a prisoner in Malta. Even worse than this, the same commander Romagar, a few days afterwards, captured another ship in the same area, aboard which was the Sanjak of Alexandria, a man of the highest rank, and governor of a province. He was on his way at the Sultan's orders to the courts at Constantinople. In the same year, 1564, 5 galleys of the order commanded by Pierre de Joux, a French knight, together with the 2 galleys of the Grand Master, commanded by Romgar, captured a ship belonging to the chief Aga. He was the master of the Grand Port, one of the Sultan's principal advisors, and one of the most important men in the whole of the Turkish Empire. The vessel was a very large merchantman and was on her way to Venice, escorted by 20 galleys, when she encountered the 7 galleys of St. John. After a bloody battle with considerable losses on both sides, the merchantman was captured and taken back to Malta. It is estimated that this prize was worth more than 80,000 ducats, as she was laden with silks from the Orient and valuable metals, as well as other merchandise. It is not difficult to imagine the fury felt in the court of the Sultan at the loss of so valuable and important a ship. It is said also that the Sultan's favourite wife, Roxelane, never ceased urging her husband to destroy Malta completely, and to this end she prevailed upon the imams to convince the Sultan that this was the only way in which he could salve his conscience. The galleys of the order were interfering with the pilgrimages of the faithful to the tomb of the Prophet Muhammad. On her death, Roxelane left a large sum of money in trust to be devoted to an expedition against Malta as a pious act for the repose of her soul. When the news reached Constantinople in October 1564 that Don Garcia de Toledo had seized Peñón de Vélez de la Gomera, a fortified island and a haunt of pirates and corsairs which had long been a thorn in the side of the Christians, matters came to a head. This same year, 2 letters written in Malta, one by the Sanjak of Alexandria and the others by the slaves held in Malta, reached Constantinople and came into the hands of the Sultan Suleiman. They described the immense damage that the galleys of St. John were inflicting on all the trade routes of the Sultan's empire, and told also of the vast number of his subjects who were held in slavery in Malta, referring especially to the distinguished lady now held prisoner there. The letters declared that death was preferable to life in captivity, and indeed they even reproached the Sultan that he, the greatest emperor on earth, should allow such a small island, weak at the moment but which might become impregnable, to have the effrontery to oppose his might. Finally, they begged him on their knees to take pity on his subjects in their desperate plight. A few days after receiving these letters, Suleiman summoned his pashas and ministers to a council. All these gathered in the presence of the Sultan, eager to hear his command. Suleiman ordered the 2 letters to be read, and the recital aroused the deepest emotion in the hearts of those present. But by far the most moved was the chief Aga, who had suffered more than any other at the hands of the order's galleys, since it was he who held the contract for Turkish merchant shipping, and his losses had been very great indeed. In order to arouse the Sultan even more in his projects against the island of Malta, the Aga spoke out as follows. "Invincible and mighty Lord, if I thought it necessary to arouse your majesty by words, I would give you eloquent and weighty arguments. But I know well that nothing can turn you from your intention or revoke the order that you have given in your wisdom, that we should utterly destroy this little island, which I am reluctant even to name. The thing that I regret deeply is that it should be at all necessary to send your invincible fleet and your mighty army against this accursed and insignificant island, just because nobody has bothered to take it for himself. It seems to me that we Turks who live under the invincible rule of the Ottoman dynasty are not like our fathers who served your fathers in the past, for they captured the whole of Syria from the Christians, and, one must admit, they are a warlike people. It was with equal courage that our fathers afterwards drove the Sofi into retreat in the mountains and conquered the empire of Trebizond. In your own day, your majesty has humbled the ruler of Hungary and made him pay for his effrontery with his kingdom and his life. Many other of your majesty's victories I could enumerate, but they are so famous that I will not weary you by speaking of them. I say only that the people of this island of which we are talking shall have good reason to know the mighty power of your majesty, especially after the siege and capture of Rhodes, which was much stronger and better fortified than Malta can possibly be at this moment. I conclude by most humbly begging your majesty to show pity upon your people and to punish these knights without mercy, for they have shown no gratitude at all for the clemency with which your majesty has treated them on so many occasions. So that you may be confident of victory, let your army and your preparations be such that the pride of these men, who resisted for 6 months the great attack which you in person led against them in the island of Rhodes, will be abased. With these words, the Aga concluded. The Sultan and all the members of his council were delighted with the Chief Aga's speech. It was again confirmed that they should carry out the enterprise, and for this purpose the various divisions of command were organised. After the Sultan had listened to the advice of his council, he sent for Piali Pasha, his admiral of the fleet, and ordered him to get all the ships ready without delay. Both old and new were put into commission, and he was to build whatever others he thought fit. At the same time, he was to muster all the trained oarsmen of the empire and to make all the necessary arrangements for the provisioning and victualling of the armada. Piali wasted no time in obeying the Sultan's orders. He summoned all the captains and officers of the fleet to whom he passed on Suleiman's decrees. They were to make every preparation for the expedition at the greatest possible speed and under pain of the Sultan's displeasure. Piali also sent agents with his mandate to the coasts of Greece, to Anatolia, and to the Morea, and elsewhere with orders to press gang oarsmen. Furthermore, he sent carpenters and shipwrights to the Black Sea, where wood is plentiful, with instructions to build 20 new galleys. As soon as Piali had given his orders, there was ceaseless activity in every shipyard, with new galleys being built and old ones renovated. Before this, on the command of the Sultan, they had also begun casting and founding heavy pieces of artillery. One of these was a basilisk of 180 hundredweight, which fired a cast iron ball weighing 100 weight. The two other guns fired 80-pound shot and weighed 130 hundredweight. There were 4 others firing 60-pound cannonballs and weighing 110 hundredweight. For these new pieces of artillery, special carriages were constructed of great strength, running on iron axles and iron-rimmed wheels. The Sultan gave orders that 6,000 of the best Janissary troops were to be selected for the expedition, and one of their Agas was picked for the command, since the Aga General himself may never leave the Sultan's side. Dispatches were sent to Greece, Anatolia, Caramania, and the Morea, with orders for all the beys, their lieutenants and junior officers, and all the fighting men under their command to stand to the alert. Mustafa Pasha was chosen to be Captain General of the army. He had been in command during the Hungarian War and was an old man of great experience. When all these preparations were well underway, the Sultan ordered Ali Pasha to summon before him Mustafa and Piali, and he addressed them as follows. Do not think, my valiant captains, that what I'm going to say is due to any lack of confidence in you. I know you to be 2 brave men, and I speak only because it is my honour and my reputations which are at stake. These are things which, in the battles and victories that you have fought under my banner, you have both clearly shown that you hold dear. But quite apart from this, I have sent for you so that you could hear my commands from my own lips. These are, that it is my dearest wish to capture the island of Malta, not because it is important in itself, but because if this expedition is successful, there will follow other, more large-scale enterprises. It is to show you how serious I am that I have recalled Mustafa from Hungary, where he was in a position of great importance, and have also given orders for all the forces in my pay to embark upon this expedition. I will now tell you why it is that I have chosen 2 of you to take charge of one expedition. One is to command the land forces, and the other the sea, a division of command I have never before practiced, but so that you may fully understand my intentions, listen to what I have to say. I have no fear of any of the Christian powers, but since you will be so near Sicily and Naples, which belongs to the King of Spain, he may try to interfere with my plans by attacking you while you are engaged on the siege. This, then, is why I'm sending the two of you, so that while one of you captures the island, the other may ensure that we have command of the sea. I am giving you both all the powers you need for the enterprise, and I ask, and indeed trust, that you will justify my faith and do your best to be successful. If you do succeed, we shall try to accomplish what my father attempted, the conquest of Calabria, a task well begun by the capture of the important point of Otranto. Sometimes princes and rulers achieve success in unlooked-for ways. In our case, the capture of Malta would gain us considerable wealth and power, for we should then be able to send our fleet into the western seas, and so enhance our reputation and damage our enemies. There would come a time when we should take that fertile land, Sicily, the granary of the Romans, who once ruled where now, praise be to Allah and his Prophet, it is we who rule. Thus, we should be able to make war upon Italy and upon Hungary, and the great German Empire would become ours. We should extend our sway to the limits of the known world, and your names would become immortal. On this expedition, I am sending half of my children, the Janissaries. I know that they will be of the greatest help in gaining the victory I so much desire, and this is why I am depriving myself of my bodyguard. I have also allowed it to be rumoured that you are not only sailing against Malta, but against the whole of Italy. This is to keep our enemies in a state of uncertainty and to make them divide their forces. Finally, under pain of my displeasure, I command you to work together in harmony in all things. If you do not, then all our labours will be in vain. When the Sultan had finished speaking, the Pashas bowed their heads in a sign of obedience and humility. Without a word, they made obeisance, as is their custom, and departed. Within 48 hours, arrangements were made for collecting large numbers of hides, woolen sacks, old tents, and old sails for making defences and breastworks, since it was known that in Malta they would find no material and that there was very little earth. Vast quantities of powder and shot, both for the artillery and for the small arms, were also got ready. Lead, ropes, spades, picks, shovels, iron bars, wood, and other materials were collected. All the artillery to be taken for the siege was examined and overhauled, including 4 reinforced cannon and 4 fearsome basilisks. To sum up, arrangements were made to take a great quantity of everything that might be conceivably necessary. 10 large ships were got ready and were loaded with 100,000 iron cannonballs and 15,000 hundredweight of gunpowder, as well as a great number of wheels and carriages for the guns. 9 galleys of 25 benches a side were mustered, one of them loaded, after the utmost difficulty, with the great basilisk alone, together with its ammunition. Whilst the fleet was getting ready, the Sultan ordered Dragut in Tripoli to prepare his fleet and join the expedition. A similar order was sent to Hassan, ruler of Algiers, telling him to alert all the corsairs in the western seas. When at last everything was ready, they launched all the galleys, both old and new. The largest of these, with 32 benches of oars, was for Piali the Admiral, while another of 28 benches was for Mustafa. So efficiently and swiftly had the preparations been carried out that the Armada was ready by the end of February 1565. All that remained was for the galleys which were being built on the Black Sea to join them, but these were delayed due to the late arrival of the oarsmen. At this time the Sultan owned a personal state barge, which was very richly decorated. It was quite small, having only 26 benches, but Suleiman gave orders that it too should join the expedition. On the day that it was launched, there was great festivity and rejoicing, both in Constantinople and in the fleet. The captain appointed to this royal command was a fine seaman and descendant of Barbarossa, known as Dali Suleiman. At this stage, the galleys from the Black Sea arrived, but since time had been short, only 13 of them and 1 galliot had been completed. These ships and their oarsmen made up the full fleet, and the Armada was now ready to set sail. On the 22nd of March 1565, Mustafa Pasha received the standard and the general's sword. He set sail with the whole fleet and the army to the 7 towers of Constantinople, the ships, the galleys, and all the other vessels bedecked with flags. They took their departure in an atmosphere of triumph, and to the sound of trumpets and the thunder of artillery from the castles which guard the strait. So confident were they, and in such eagerness to be gone, that they failed to visit the tomb of Barbarossa, as was the usual custom. The following ships sailed from Constantinople for Malta: 130 royal galleys, 30 galleots, 9 barges, 10 large merchantmen, and about 200 smaller transports. The names of the principal commanders in the expedition against Malta were Mustafa Pasha, Commander-in-Chief of the Army; Piali Pasha, Admiral of the Fleet; Dragut, King of Tripoli; Hassan, ruler of Algiers; the Aga of the Janissaries; and Kurtakoli. The Admiral ordered all ships to make for the nearest island for recalking. Some went to Volo, others to Negroponte, others to Chios, others to the Black Island, and the rest to the island of the Jews. When the ships were all ready, they reassembled in the port of Arnot, near Nauplia. While they were in the area, Ali Portu, the governor of Rhodes, Kurtakoli, and the Kaya Bey, Dragut's lieutenant, captured 3 ships from Ragusa, which were laden with wheat and other provisions. These they commandeered for the fleet, paying both for the cargo and the vessels. The armada finally left harbour in a dead calm, the galleys taking the merchantmen, the barges, and the other ships in tow. But that very same night, while in the Nauplia Channel, although it was flat calm, one of the largest merchantmen was lost, together with all its ammunition and some 700 spahis. Only the captain and 20 of the crew were saved. I am of the opinion that it was the captain himself who sank his ship in order to sabotage the expedition, for a great deal of ammunition was lost in this ship. While they were in these waters, 2 other ships ran aground and would also have been lost if they had not been lightened by disembarking their troops and ammunition. Although they were very carefully salvaged, one of them leaked so badly that a great deal of gunpowder was ruined. 2 of the divisional captains, together with 7 other galleys, turned back for the port of Arnot, where their ships were repaired and refitted. After this, they sailed to rejoin the fleet, taking advantage of the good weather. The whole armada assembled at Modon and in the excellent harbour of Navarino for the fleet to revictual. While they were at anchor here, many corsairs from the Levant joined them. These were men who had been outlawed by the Sultan but were given a free pardon on condition that they joined the expedition against Malta. It was at Navarino that the Pashas also mustered all their forces. The soldiers who had been conscripted for the expedition, having come overland from Greece, Anatolia, Caramania, and the Morea, and other parts of the empire, to assemble here for embarkation. There were a great many more troops than was necessary, so only the best were chosen. The least warlike, and others who had joined up unwillingly, were dismissed from the expedition, their officers making a great deal of money out of granting them their discharge. A rumour had got about in the army and the fleet that the expedition was likely to be difficult and dangerous, and that heavy losses were expected. For this reason, those who were reluctant to join were more than eager to pay whatever they were asked in order to secure their release. While they were in Navarino, the Pashas treated the Janissaries and the Spahis to a number of banquets and gave them money and jewels. They were so elated by this that they felt that not only Malta, but indeed the whole of Italy was already theirs. The total force which sailed for Malta consisted of 6,000 Spahis, all archers, commanded by a Sanjak Bey and 2 lieutenants. These were the best troops selected out of the great number who had reported for duty. 500 Spahis under a Sanjak Bey from Caramania. 400 adventurers under a Sanjak Bey from Mytilene. 6,000 Janissaries of the Sultan's bodyguard under an Aga, all musketeers. 2,500 Spahis from Romania. 3,500 adventurers under the command of a Sanjak Bey and an Ali Bey. 4,000 adventurers, all religious fanatics. Most of these were men of private means, who were accustomed to spending their leisure hours in their mosques. Most of them were dressed in white, and some of them wore the green turban, showing that they had made the pilgrimage to Mecca. These men had begged the Sultan to allow them to go and fight for their faith, for they believed that their souls would be saved if they died in battle. 6,000 corsairs and sailors, all armed differently. In addition, there were many Jewish merchants who joined the expedition with a lavish supply of goods and money so as to be able to purchase Christian slaves. The total number of fighting men who sailed for the Levant for the attack on Malta was 28,500. A reliable estimate of the men who took part in the actual attack on Malta is 48,000. This includes the corsairs from the Levant, the followers of Dragut, king of Tripoli, and the force led by Hassan, ruler of Algiers. In charge of the artillery, there was a Turkish general, and there were also 5 trained engineers, 1 Greek, 1 Slav, a Venetian, an Italian renegade, and a Turk. Before they left Constantinople, each of the adventurers was given 5 gold sequins with which to buy himself arms and other necessities. They did not leave them much money for food, but many of them joined up in the hope that they would be rewarded for their services by being made spahis. The oarsmen were paid 2 aspas a day. This is a silver oriental coin equivalent to 2 or 3 cortillos in Castilian money. Before they sailed, each of them was given 20 gold sequins, which was the Sultan's payment for their services. Later on, many of those oarsmen took part in the land fighting and also served as sappers. When the fleet originally sailed, it had provisions for 6 months, but this was greatly reduced owing to the loss of the large merchantmen. Among the other artillery, Mustafa also brought from Gallipoli a large cannon which fired stone shot. This was one which had been used by the Sultan Suleiman in the siege of Rhodes. On the 12th of May, during the second watch of the night, the fleet sailed from Navarino. The weather was so good that it was off the island of Malta 6 days later on the 18th of May. It was first seen at dawn 30 miles to the southeast of the island with all its sails lowered. Rumour has it that when Malta was in sight, Mustafa Pasha produced a firman from the Sultan which gave him powers over and above those of the admiral. The secrecy with which Mustafa had concealed this document from him infuriated Piali. It is hardly surprising that from that moment onwards there was little chance of harmony between them. End of chapter 1.